News First, Newsline.
Hello there, very good evening. Welcome to another edition of Newsline. The rule of law in Sri Lanka is currently facing certain challenges. It's been facing quite a lot of pressure since last year. The Aragalaya, the people's uprising demanding for more accountability in the face of the massive economic crisis that Sri Lanka faced. Now we see certain pieces of legislation being pushed through without consulting stakeholders. Starting off, of course, is the anti-terrorism bill. It was initially presented in March and it was withdrawn because of the draconian provisions that were in it and mainly because of the public opposition against that act. But now we see the anti-terrorism bill, same name, but it has come again. And this time around, has things changed? We also have the cybersecurity bill that has been published on the Gazette, and we wait to see what the government's next move would be. To discuss these matters and much more, we've got with us here today President's Counsel Farman Cassim, the Legal Secretary of the Samagichana Balawegaya. A very good evening, Sharon. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Sharon.
So, President's Counsel Farman Cassim, starting there has been quite a number of attempts to subvert public discourse about matters of importance to the country. The people are not allowed to voice their opinion to a certain degree. We saw during the Aragalaya, people were out and about. They were really expressing their views and speaking about the issues that really matter to them. But now there is a slight campaign to instill fear in the hearts of people. And these pieces of legislation are coming out against such a backdrop. Now they're coming out, they're being withdrawn, they're coming again. What do you think is really happening here?
So, Sharon, what's happening is during a period like the Aragalaya or when the shove comes to push, people will come out whatever it may be. We have seen that in the history, we have seen that in the past. Whatever legislation you bring in or whatever laws that you bring in, you can't stop a people's uprising. The people rose against the dictatorial and the economic catastrophe that Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the SLP with the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna and the Rajapakshas brought towards this country. So people rose against that and they expected something better, but we have still got the Rajapaksa regime together with Ranil Wickremesinghe, who's part of the Rajapaksa regime, leading the country. Why the people are silent at the moment, Charlene, is because they know an election is coming next year. And at that election, the people will then voice their opinion.
But are you 100% sure that an election or elections will be held next year?
Yes, if there is no presidential election by next year, November, or if elections are not called 6 weeks before, then we won't have a president.
Because the term of this president would naturally end.
Naturally end. Like we don't have the local councils now and the Pradesh Sabhas, so we won't have a president.
But we're really in quite uncharted territory because as you and I speak right now, we are in an election period. Because as at now, the local government elections have been announced and the date of the local government elections has been postponed indefinitely. So certain things that the government is even doing right now, like transfer of police officers, very routine things that need to happen in a country are quite illegal on the basis that it is an election period, and during an election period, these things can't be done. So my question to you is, do you think that there is a chance where we might see something out of the box, a little bit different than what is written in our constitution, where the president continues on?
No, there's nothing of that sort. That's our opinion peddled by the Ranil Rajapaksa or Ranil Wickremesinghe and Rajapaksa regime just to put confusion into the people. That's not going to happen. 100% there's going to be an election next year. It's going to be a presidential election or if Ranil decides to dissolve parliament, a parliamentary election. But come what may, there will be a presidential election before November next year, and that's for sure. You cannot, local government elections have been postponed time and time again in Sri Lanka. This is not the first time, so it's nothing unique. This is almost probably, in my memory, speaking off my head, it's about the fourth time. And anyway, Ranil Wickremesinghe has a tendency to postpone local government elections, which he did even in 2016. He has a fear of elections because he loses elections. I mean, that's simple. The long and short is that Ranil Wickremesinghe is not capable of winning an election. So the more he can postpone and wait till the last day. So he'll enjoy life. He's now in the States. He's traveling the globe. He'll go to Malaysia next. He'll go to Cuba. I think he went to Cuba also last week, and he will travel the world and enjoy his life for the next year and 2 months.
So, but what about the changes that are being made to Sri Lanka's economy, to Sri Lanka's state-owned enterprises? Now, these were changes that were demanded, of course, from the general public. The general public saw that state-owned enterprises are big white elephants. They just suck up so much of the taxpayers' money. And a lot of reforms are really taking place in the country under a government whose legitimacy is questionable. Of course, you as the legal secretary of the Samagijana Balavegya and a member of that party would be advocating for a government under the Samagijana Balavegya or a president from the Samagijana Balavegya. If by chance the Samagijana Balavegya does come into power, would that mean that the party would make a U-turn on all of these reforms that are being done?
See, everything what happened in Sri Lanka is government comes into power and, like you said, makes a U-turn and ruins all the work done by the previous government. That's not the way it should be. See, if something is done, you need to carry that forward in the right which you think is correct. You don't do a U-turn and ruin everything what the early government, because governments are there, they're running the country with the people's mandate. So they have done certain things which is very selfish and which is very wrong to do a U-turn and, ruin everything what has been done. Because end of the day, you don't do 100% wrong. No? You do certain good things, certain wrong things. And we as opposition point out the wrong things. So whatever good that has been happening, we will continue. Whatever bad, we'll stop. And for example, I'll give you an example. If for SOEs, see, there is no one way of restructuring the SOEs. No, President Premadasa brought in the Janata Karana or the peopleization. That is one way. So these are all people-friendly, SOE reforms that can be done. So there are several ways that you can do it, and several options open. But one thing we will not do is, let the rich people get away and let the workers suffer like the Ranil Wickremesinghe and the Rajapaksa regime did with the EPF. That we are not for that. We are a people-friendly government, and we will see that the burden or the hurt or the pain is taken by all Sri Lankans and not by only the working class.
But again, now these proposals have already been put forward to the IMF, and given the fact that we've been to the IMF 16 or maybe even 17 times, do you think they will be amenable to changes in the plans that have already been drafted and implemented?
No, not changes. The changes in the sense they are always up for negotiation. There is always you can sit around a table and negotiate. Ranil Wickremesinghe cannot negotiate because he will just say anything what the IMF says. So there is always. I can remember when President Premadasa was president, we went to the IMF at that time, and they were and in fact he got the IMF to help his Janasavya. They had not heard about a welfare package like this. The IMF had not even heard about it. But President Premadasa convinced them and got them to support his Janasavya program, as a welfare arm of the reforms. So the negotiation has to be strong, the negotiation has to be credible, the negotiation has to be done honestly. When they know you're honest and the IMF knows you're honest and you're working for the people, then they will, help you. Because if they know that the country is uplifted and the poor is uplifted, the burden is off the IMF end of the day. They don't have to keep on helping this particular country. So they're also looking at, for us to take baby steps one day to start walking properly. So that's how you negotiate, and you have to be honest, credible, and efficient.
President's Counsel Cassim, we've always seen when there's an election in Sri Lanka, or especially during the run-up to an election, there is always a slogan. In the immediate memory of many of our viewers, you might remember back in 2015, it was anti-corruption, good governance. That was the theme. Then come 2019, it was national security, eradicating terrorism, justice for the Easter Sunday attacks. What do you think the slogan of the election that is to come, and as you predicted, a presidential election, would be?
See, I don't think I can comment on a slogan because I'm not a politician, Shalan. But what I can tell you is there will be our manifesto will be a people's friendly manifesto, which will concentrate on the 90% of the population of Sri Lanka who cannot afford 3 meals a day, 60% of the children who have to skip a meal for the day, 42% of the children who are stunted in growth and are suffering of malnutrition. So our mandate will revolve around that, revolve around education, revolve around health, revolve around housing, and revolve around resurrecting the economy. So that will be our propaganda material, or what we actually want to do, and our manifesto will revolve around that. Because
So-
as you know, Sharon, our leader is a very people's-friendly leader. No opposition has done this amount of work, this amount of welfare programs being in the opposition. Just imagine, we have helped so many schools, over 100 schools, over 30 hospitals, and so many institutions. Just imagine when Sajid Premadasa becomes president of this country next year, what he's going to do. Being in the opposition, he's doing so much. Just imagine when he's in government, what he's going to do. Because he has this knack of convincing people, and people also get convinced because he's uncorruptible. You cannot corrupt him. He has no children, he has no brothers and sisters who are in politics. He's a person who has grown politics from the bottom. He went to Hambantota and didn't wear Hublot watches after about 5 years like some do, or try to send a rocket after about 10 years like some do. He's a proper politician who works for the people. So people trust him, people have hope in him, and so that's how he will move forward.
Since you spoke about Hambantota, recently speaking at an event in Hambantota, parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa said that under a SLPP government, Sri Lanka's economy will not just be the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia, but the Hambantota district will become the fastest developing district in the whole of Southeast Asia. Now, these promises also seem to be, similar to economic prosperity promises that the SJP or be it any other party is really putting forward. So what's the difference?
Yes, so you had to go back to a scientific research methodology to come to a finding to see who's talking shop or who's talking facts. No? That's what I said. Now, when you look at Sajid Premadasa, look at his conduct in the past. Now, what he is doing in the opposition, that's why I told you, has any opposition done what the SJB in these 3 years has done so far for the country? No. I mean, if anybody can challenge me now, and anybody can tell me what any other opposition has done in 3 years, I will just say yes, you're right and I'm wrong. And so that's, you go by that evidence. Rajapaksa's Namal Rajapaksa made the statement, I think. Rajapaksas have been in politics from 1972, if I'm not mistaken. Hambantota has been Hambantota from 1972. It's one of the most deprived districts in this country. That family is one of the richest families in Asia, but that district, Hambantota district, still remains the same. So evidence-based, factual-based. I mean, he's just saying things for the sake of saying it, which is, you can wear Hublot watches and you can wear various things and, come and make statements. They look with statements which look very nice, statements which you have been trained for, statement which a good PR agency has come and told you to say these things, tick off the boxes, you look good, you change your hair, you say these things, and people might, buy the story. But Sri Lankans are very politically savvy when it comes to elections, and they will vote in 2024.
Sri Lanka is not only facing an economic crisis, it's also facing a governance crisis. And that's why, as a novel initiative, the IMF is also going to conduct a governance diagnostic on Sri Lanka. Local civil organizations have also already conducted a governance diagnostic and released it to the general public. So we'll discuss a little bit about the collapse in the governance system here in Sri Lanka and what are the plans of the SJP to fix this after a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Newsline.
News First, Newsline.
Parliament heats up during debate on the Easter Sunday terror attacks. Opposition tells government to ask India about Abu Hind and true status of Sarah Jasmine. Acting Defence Minister says the opposition is aware of the true facts but continues to lie about it. Former President Sri Lanka and Field Marshal Fonseca clash over the Easter Sunday terror attack inquiry.
ඉන්දියාවේ හිටපු කාලේ මට 100,000ක් විශ්වාසයි අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම සැලේ හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. කිසිම දවසක සැලේ මට හම්බෙලත් නැහැ. ඉන්දියාවේදී කිසි තැනක සැලේ මම ඉන්න තැනක් දැනගෙන හිටියෙත් නැහැ.
Political crisis was averted thanks to fertilizer gift from the US, says President. Wickremesinghe also meets with IMF Managing Director. Advanced level examination postponed. Revised dates to be announced soon. India suspends visas for Canadians as row escalates. Chinese geophysical scientific research vessel Shiyan 6 moves closer to India's exclusive economic zone.
News First, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. We're in discussion with President's Counsel Farman Cassim, the Legal Secretary of the Samagi Jana Balavegia. President's Counsel Farman Cassim, before we move on to what we promised, of course, our viewers, a little bit about the collapse in governance here in Sri Lanka and what the SJB is planning on doing, I'd like to revisit these pieces of legislation, of course, that the government is planning on putting through now. The ATA was initially brought in March, as I said before, and it was withdrawn because of public outcry against it. Now it's been brought again, so you'd naturally expect it to have certain amendments. So I believe you've studied the Act. Is there a difference between the two?
There are subtle differences, Sharon, but more than the differences and going into the nitty-gritty of the Act, what we need to ask ourselves is, do we need an anti-terrorism act first of all? What has the anti-terrorism act taught us in the last 40 years? How do we, as a peoples, how have we used the anti-terrorism act? So those questions need to be answered first. So first of all, we have had this act since 1978. The
Prevention of Terrorism.
Yeah. So the predecessor.
Anti-terrorism law.
Predecessor of the ATA still is. Still is. For going 40 plus years. It didn't prevent. It was brought in to quell the LTT, but it didn't prevent the LTT until we militarily decimated the LTT militarily. Same with the JVP uprising, with Vijay Veera and the JVP uprising twice over. First of course, there was in 71, there was no PTA, but in 87, 89, there was the PTA. But again, until we physically had to decimate the JVP, using arms and ammunition and all that kind of thing, there was no end. So this PTA at that I don't think has prevented any terrorist activity. Also, the implementation of the act is mostly on political biasness or your personal agendas. Let's take two examples, recent examples. I don't want to go into the past because people won't remember. Let's take Hijaz Hizbullah and Vasanta Mudalige. Now, Hijaz Hizbullah, why was he taken in? Because some people wanted to portray him as the mastermind of the Easter bombing. Then Vasanta Mudalige was taken in because he was becoming a bit of a nuisance to Ranil Wickremesinghe. So those are the things that are used. That's why it's used to the PTA, not to quell uprising. I have never heard of any to quell an uprising. Suddenly they use a PTA and go and catch a terrorist or something like that. You have the normal laws. I mean, if you read the act, it says murder. The offences are that murder for then terrorizing or frightening people, intimidating people, damaging public property. Now all those are covered by the normal laws. Why would you need a PTA act specially to do this? That is because you want to take somebody into custody and keep them in for 5 or 10 or 15 years and give them the fear that if you say anything, I will charge you under the PTA. Because I have the discretion as the defense secretary, say I'm the defense secretary, I have the discretion to put you in for 10 years or 15 years, right? So you do that, you have that fear. So what the EU, I mean, this is what happens when you have mediocrity, drafting legislation. You have to have a wider dialogue. You have to have a wider discussion. And now in the EU, there are certain anti-terrorism steps that can be taken, legislation. But that only kicks in when there is a terrorist
threat.
Not only a threat. If something exactly happens, say for example, say in Ireland or someplace, some people have weapons and they are now holding off and trying to ask for a different part of Ireland in the next week or something. Then that kicks in, right? Not just because you want. Now, say if you have some arms, if I'm the defense secretary, I don't like you, I'll say okay, get him under the PTA, not under the normal law. So I am deciding, I am playing God, and putting you under the PTA when you have that threat. So that is where the fundamental difference lies, So we have to think about this. PTA has never helped us in the long run. It has basically broken bridges and basically ruined harmony of the people. And it has always been used, like I said, for, look at Hijaz Hizbullah and Vasanta Mudalike. Vasanta Mudalike, why? Okay, Hijaz will say, they had some suspicion, no, they wanted to do something, whatever. 4 or 5 years ago, they had the agenda to create a narrative that somebody else did the bombing. Let's talk about Vasanta Mudalike. Now, why was he under the PTA? I mean, what reason to charge him under the PTA? Just to show the others. Now, you all also don't shout, you all don't come to the streets. We'll charge you under the PTA. That is why I say that this, a PTA or a ATA Act will not work in Sri Lanka. It's going to be another tool to, quell dissent.
And this act, although is to replace the PTA when people called for, more judicial oversight for the PTA, this is less in different levels. It has more to a certain degree, but however, the definition of terrorism has been expanded to such a level where pretty much anything that you do, I mean, it even says if any person tries to prevent the government, any foreign organization or any foreign government from doing something or force them to do something, that person is liable to be charged under the PTA. I mean, this is the definition of a person exercising a democratic right. I mean, if the people of Sri Lanka